A new attack submarine has just entered active service with Israel's Navy, and almost nobody was told. No televised commissioning ceremony, no press conference, no formal statement from the Israeli government marking the moment. According to a report from the Israeli financial and business outlet Calculist, the vessel, named INS Drakon, has been delivered to the Israeli Navy and quietly folded into its fleet. The transfer, Calculist reports, went through with limited fanfare, which the outlet frames as consistent with how Israel has long handled its submarine program. That single fact raises a real question, and it's one we'll spend the next several minutes on. Why does a modern Navy go out of its way to keep a warship's arrival this quiet? And what does one more submarine actually change about Israel's military posture in 2026? We'll walk through what's confirmed about INS Drakon, what isn't, why Israel has treated its submarine fleet as a special case for decades, and what independent analysts have assessed over the years, keeping attributed reporting separate from established public record. That separation matters more here than in almost any other kind of military story, because so much of what gets said publicly about Israeli submarines is inference, not confirmation. Let's start with what the source actually says, because the line between reported fact and everything else matters here. Calculist reports that the Israeli Navy has taken delivery of a new submarine, identified as INS Drakon, meant to expand the Navy's strategic reach. The outlet describes the handover as low profile, carried out without the kind of public rollout many navies give a major new warship. That's the entirety of the specific claim, a named submarine, delivered quietly, reportedly expanding Israel's naval reach. Beyond that, the report doesn't detail the submarine's armament, displacement, crew size, or operational assignment, and neither will we, because those details simply aren't part of the public record right now. What we can speak to honestly is the pattern this fits into. Israel's submarine program has a long, well-documented history, and that history explains why a quiet delivery like this one isn't unusual at all. Israel's current submarine fleet is built around a design known as the Dolphin class, constructed in Germany by the shipyard now called ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems, historically known under its older name, Handelswerk Deutsche Werft. The first 3 Dolphin-class boats, commissioned in the late 1990s, replaced an earlier generation of British-built submarines that had served the Israeli Navy since the 1970s. A second batch of 2 improved submarines, fitted with air-independent propulsion, followed in the 2010s. Air-independent propulsion, usually shortened to AIP, means in plain terms that a submarine can generate power without surfacing or running a snorkel to draw in air for a diesel engine, which makes the boat quieter and lets it stay submerged for far longer stretches. That capability matters enormously for a navy that wants its submarines patrolling undetected. In 2017, Israel's Ministry of Defense signed an agreement with the German government and ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems for a 3rd generation of submarines, meant to eventually replace the oldest Dolphin-class boats as they reach the end of their service lives. That program has been publicly reported for years, discussed in both Israeli and German press, and referenced in budget and procurement disclosures on both sides. This is well-established background, not a contested claim. The new generation boats have been reported under names tied to Israel's naval history, continuing a long-standing tradition in the Israeli Navy of naming submarines after vessels retired, or in some cases lost, earlier in the fleet's history. INS Drakon fits that pattern. The name itself is Greek in origin, meaning dragon, and follows a broader convention across the fleet of naming boats after sea creatures and mythological figures, alongside names like Leviathan, Tannin, meaning crocodile in Hebrew, and Rahav, a sea monster referenced in the Hebrew Bible. Here's where the story gets more complicated than a simple delivery announcement, though. Submarine programs like this one rarely run on schedule. Reporting over the past several years has repeatedly noted delays in Israel's next-generation submarine program. Production slowdowns at the German shipyard, cost disputes between Jerusalem and Berlin, and periodic diplomatic friction over the terms of the deal. None of that is unusual for a major submarine acquisition. These are among the most complex machines any military builds, and delays measured in years, not months, are common across many countries' submarine programs, not just Israel's. Australia, Norway, and South Korea have all faced comparable schedule slips on their own submarine deals in the same period. But it does mean that when a boat like INS Drakon is finally confirmed delivered, it marks the end of a long and difficult acquisition process, one outside observers have been tracking for the better part of a decade. I spent time going through past reporting on this program while putting this video together, and one detail kept standing out: how rarely Israel's government comments on its submarines at all, even when foreign outlets confirm what look like major milestones. That silence is itself a pattern, and it traces back to a policy that predates every submarine currently in the fleet. Israel maintains what's often called a policy of nuclear ambiguity, referred to in Hebrew as a mimet. The Israeli government has never officially confirmed or denied possessing nuclear weapons, even though independent analysts, arms control researchers, and multiple foreign governments have long assessed that Israel does possess a nuclear arsenal. This context matters, and it needs to be stated carefully. Israel's official position is neither confirmation nor denial, and that hasn't changed for decades. What outside analysts, not the Israeli government, have assessed for years is that Israel's Dolphin-class submarines may be capable of launching nuclear-capable cruise missiles, which would give the country what strategists call a second strike capability, the ability to retaliate with nuclear weapons even if its land-based forces were destroyed in a first strike. This is an analyst assessment, discussed in international defense and arms control publications for more than 2 decades, not an Israeli government confirmation. We're flagging that distinction on purpose because blurring the two would misrepresent what's actually known. So here's the second layer of the question we opened with. Is a new submarine like INS Drakon simply a fleet modernization story, replacing aging boats with newer ones as any navy eventually has to do? Or does it carry weight in the broader, unconfirmed second strike conversation outside analysts have been having for years? Based on what's publicly confirmed, we can only answer part of that. What's confirmed is that Israel is modernizing an aging submarine fleet under a program signed in 2017, and that INS Drakon appears to be part of that generational handover. What remains unconfirmed, and will likely stay that way, is any operational detail about what the submarine carries or how it'll be used, because Israel has never discussed that publicly for any of its submarines, old or new, going back to the 1990s. It also helps to understand why Israel treats undersea capability as strategically different from its air force or its tanks, and that comes down to geography as much as policy. Israel is a small country with limited strategic depth, surrounded by potential adversaries on land. A submarine that can operate far from Israeli shores, undetected, for weeks at a time offers a kind of survivability and reach that ground-based systems can't match. That's general, well-established strategic reasoning about naval doctrine, not something specific to this submarine's mission. Israel's relationship with its submarine fleet hasn't always been triumphant, either. In January 1968, the submarine INS Dakar disappeared while sailing from Britain to Israel and was lost with its entire crew of 69 sailors, one of the worst peacetime disasters in Israeli military history. The wreck wasn't located until 1999. More than 3 decades later, after an extensive search effort. That history is part of why the Israeli Navy's submarine service carries particular weight domestically. It's part of the emotional backdrop here, even if it has nothing directly to do with INS Drakon's delivery this year. What strikes us about this case is less the submarine itself and more what it says about how Israel manages military information generally. Most democracies with advanced militaries put at least some naval milestones on public display. A commissioning ceremony, an official photo, a defense minister's statement. Israel's Navy has, for decades, treated its submarine fleet almost as a category apart from the rest of its public-facing military, something journalists piece together from fragments rather than confirm through official channels. That's an observation about transparency, not a claim about the submarine's capabilities, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Here's an unpopular opinion, and it'll probably split the people watching this. Keeping a program's existence effectively secret from your own public, funded by taxpayers, while regional adversaries and allied intelligence services almost certainly track it anyway, mostly limits accountability at home rather than adding security abroad. Whether that trade-off is worth it is a genuinely debatable question, and reasonable people land in very different places depending on how much weight they put on regional threat levels versus democratic transparency. What do you think? Does a democracy's public have a right to know when a major weapons platform enters service, even if the technical details stay classified? Or is Israel's approach to its submarine fleet the right call, given the region it operates in? We'd like to hear where you land on that, because it isn't a settled question, even among people who follow this closely. It's worth placing INS Drakon in its regional context too, because Israel is far from the only country in the Eastern Mediterranean and the wider Middle East investing in submarines. Egypt operates a fleet that includes German-built Type 209 boats and newer Type 214-based submarines. Turkey has its own domestic submarine construction program underway. Iran operates a mix of older Russian-built Kilo-class submarines and smaller, domestically produced midget submarines suited to the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf. None of these programs are secret in the way Israel's submarine milestones tend to be. Most are publicly announced, photographed, and discussed by their respective governments. That contrast is part of what makes Israel's approach stand out as unusual, quiet not by coincidence, but as a matter of consistent policy across multiple governments and decades. Let's return to what's actually confirmed about where this stands right now, since that's the part we can be precise about. INS Drakon has, according to Calculist's reporting, been delivered to the Israeli Navy and entered service, joining a fleet that, based on prior public reporting, consists of the original Dolphin-class boats alongside the newer AIP-equipped vessels delivered in the 2010s. The Israeli Ministry of Defense hasn't issued a detailed public statement confirming the submarine's specifications, its home port, or its planned operational role, and as of this reporting, none of that has been independently verified beyond what Calculist has published. If Israel's government or Navy issues its own statement, or if additional outlets independently confirm further details, that would change what can responsibly be reported. We're not going to speculate ahead of the record just to fill the gap. So where does that leave the open questions? A few things still remain unanswered in the public record. We don't know INS Drakon's home port assignment. We don't know whether it's the first of several boats from this newer program to be delivered, or a standalone milestone. Prior reporting on the 2017 agreement referenced multiple submarines under that deal, but which of those are complete, in sea trials, or still under construction at the German shipyard isn't something we can confirm from what's currently public. And we don't know, and likely won't know for a long time, if ever, any detail about the boat's onboard systems beyond the general category of capability analysts have attributed to this submarine class as a whole for years. If you want to verify any of this yourself rather than take our word for it, start with Calculist's own reporting, since that outlet broke the story of INS Drakon's delivery. Naval News and USNI News both cover submarine procurement in detail and are good places to check for any follow-up confirmation as this story develops. The Israeli Ministry of Defense's own public statements, whenever they come, would be the most authoritative update available. And searching for the Dolphin class and the 2017 German-Israeli submarine agreement by name will get you the fuller history of the program this boat belongs to, straight from contemporaneous reporting. If this kind of careful, sourced breakdown of a story most outlets covered in 2 sentences is useful to you, there's a related story next. How Germany's decades-long role supplying submarines to Israel became one of the more quietly important defense relationships in the region, and why Berlin has kept supplying these boats even through periods of serious political tension between the two governments. That's a deeper story than fits in this video, but it's the natural next stop if INS Drakon's history left you with more questions than answers. One last thing to say plainly, because accuracy matters more than a tidy ending. This is a story still unfolding in public reporting, not one with a clean resolution tonight. A submarine has entered a Navy service quietly. That much is reported, and as far as we can tell, solid. Everything past that, what it can do, what it means for the region, whether more boats are coming, is either analyst assessment, historical pattern, or an open question the Israeli government has, by design, chosen not to answer. That gap between what's confirmed and what's assumed is exactly where a story like this deserves the most care, and we'd rather leave you with that honest uncertainty than fill it in for you.